Welcome everybody. I'm Mark Fox of the Business Innovation Leaders Forum and delighted to partner with IDC for today's event, the Hybrid Workplace of the Future. And chairing today's session is Amy Loomis, who's the Research Vice President for the Future of Work at IDC. We've got a great panel for you today, and Amy will introduce the panel to you shortly.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm really looking forward to this panel and having a chance to share the research that we've done around the future of work. And I know the real treat is to have the conversation about how this really looks in the real world. So I'm going to start by sharing a few of the details of the research that we've done to set the stage and give a sense of how IDC looks at the future of work, and then we can dive in. But joining me today are Prakash, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Cloudbrink, Kate Eberle-Walker, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Presence, Sriram, Sampath, who's VP and Customer Experience Management and Collaboration Platforms for Tata. And last but certainly not least is Professor Martin Curley. He's the chair of the UN Digital Health Symposium for the United Nations. This is an incredibly august panel. I'm honored to be sharing the stage with them, and I'll dive right in. This is the model that IDC has put forth, and it's really the organizing structure for today's conversation. If you look at the green segment, this is how the world of work is being changed by augmentation. This could be everything from ChatGPT to robotic process automation to AR, VR, and all sorts of technologies that are facilitating both tasks and the automation of work across workflows. And that in turn is causing us to be able to change our cultures, because so much of that work is getting automated. People have the opportunity to learn new tasks, to engage with each other, both physically and virtually, in ways that are new and ways that give insight into how we can be more cohesive cultures, even if we're not side by side. And then finally, speaking of side by side, we look at both borderless digital workspaces. That means those environments like the one we're in right now that facilitate a virtual conversation or access to data, access to applications. And then, of course, the redesign of physical workplaces. We are not going back to an office or a work environment. We are going forward to a reinvented workplace with a P. So I think bearing in mind what that looks like when you bring them together, the systemic responses that each area has to one another is a really important way to think about how we move forward. So I just wanted to share a bit of data that we've gotten from our global survey around the future of work. And this data right now is based on a future enterprise research that came back from the field at the end of December. So it's quite current. And we asked about, with all these disruptions, that includes the economic challenges, the skills challenges that we have, filling shortages of people with the right skills for jobs that are overflowing with requirements, climate change, political and socio-political disruption, all of those things. Given that, what will be the most enduring technologies to drive productivity and programs to drive productivity as we move into 2023 and beyond? And these technology investments that are most likely endure are shifting. This year, we see for the first time that a shift to cloud-based connectivity, devices and applications and services is the top thing that people are investing in for the future. And then tied next are both the work on physical workplaces and hybrid work models. So we're figuring out how to make hybrid models work by investing in the means to make them work, the cloud and physical workplaces. And of course, the momentum around digital workspaces continues with that cloud infrastructure, as well as the physical infrastructure focus, of course, on employee experience, because not surprisingly, that drives customer experience improvement and automation of the repetitive tasks and workflows that we need to compensate for the lack of people who are in play to do some of those repetitive jobs. And I'll just share with you this illustration. I think we need to think of the future of work as not simply a where we work, but how we work. And I think our panelists are going to give some excellent examples of that fluid work in motion, that parity of experience, no matter where you are on what device, to be able to engage with the people, the applications, and the data that you need to get work done, and doing so in a way that opens up a democratization of access so that people who are not physically side by side can feel just as included socially and professionally as those who are side by side. You'll see that some of the biggest organizations to support hybrid workers are the ability to work effectively together. That's not just a technology investment, that's a human investment in skills around collaboration, communication, creativity across very dispersed digital and physical environments. And of course, the next thing that is right side by side is building a culture of trust, trusting employees to keep personal resources and corporate resources and client data secure and private. This is one of the number one and consistently number one or two concerns around building hybrid work culture, and trusting employees, of course, to complete their work. And that's as much a concern around leadership and building a culture of trust as it is around having the monitoring of the employees themselves. So we need to focus on those things as well as evolving the work culture, not keeping it static. And in so doing, we drive productivity because employees are more motivated to stay in the companies they are and contributing to those companies, especially when we give an opportunity for them to be quickly onboarded and engaged, and support them around their new ideas as they join the company. Hybrid work involves not only an investment in the digital, it also requires an investment in organizational approaches. So when we think about this, we've turned from a hybrid focus on remote to now more of a hybrid focus on reimagining facilities and locations. And that's really important because we're evolving and determining who's going to work where and how. And some organizations are focused on different times where people are going to work, shift management, that kind of thing. Some are looking at programs and policies that will encourage people to come into office spaces or participate in virtual environments. And some are looking at mandated policies because, of course, in some professions, it's very important that you have that in-person engagement. So I think what's interesting about this slide is to see that not one size fits all. Different geographies are going to have different preferences for each of these things as an approach to working in a hybrid fashion. I'd like to jump right in now to introducing our panel, who can share some very specific examples. And if we could just have each person, introduce themselves as they talk, I think that will give an opportunity for us to have that kind of organic discussion that I know everybody's looking forward to. So we're going to start with Professor Martin Curley, and we're going to talk about the introduction of augmentation. So I think that would be a great way to start. And Martin, can you introduce yourself, tell a bit about your work, and then talk about how virtual world and healthcare are coming together and how that augmentation is really changing the way in which people work.
Brilliant, Amy, and thank you for I really like the IDC future work model. So my name is Martin Curley. I'm a professor of innovation at Maynooth University, and most recently was leading digital transformation of the Irish healthcare system, and I'm a strategic advisor to multiple companies and governments on digital health, and lead a UN initiative trying to simplify healthcare and drive the digital transition of healthcare. But if we specifically talk about augmentation, care globally actually has a massive crisis. We have increasing demand, we have spiraling costs, we have a lot of attrition, we have demographics that are going the wrong way. So there's a huge challenge, and currently 50% of the world doesn't have access to affordable healthcare, and 50% that do have, actually the trend is going the wrong direction. So, a new hybrid work environment and the idea of virtual wards and virtual technologies are going to be very important. So we've been working in Ireland. I wrote a book called Open Innovation 2.0, and that's a book about how do you drive structural change in an industry using digital technology. And healthcare is about a decade behind other industries in digitizing, but we have been using digital technology and virtual care to really counteract the many demands. So, for example, we have been working with Roche, the pharmaceutical company, and Centric Health, who are the biggest GP network, general practitioner network in Ireland. And we have been managing heart failure patients at home. So this is completely changing the work environment, for example, for the cardiologist and for the nurses that would normally treat these patients. But most importantly, for the patients themselves, who are the beneficiaries of the service. And the results of this is we've seen a 10-fold or 10x reduction in hospitalizations by remotely monitoring these patients. And we are measuring stuff like, weight gain. We're looking at, oxygen saturation levels, and these are monitored on a daily basis using technology. And the role of the nurses changed in that we now, Centric Health have a small nurse team that are looking at alerts and calling patients when there are issues. And in healthcare, we're typically looking for what we call a quadruple aim when we deploy digital technology. We're looking for better care, lower cost, better experience, patient and clinician experience, a better quality of life. And in this specific case, for example, the patients are feeling much safer. So instead of their heart failure patient, and that's the number one cause of death in the Western world, 15.5% of deaths come from heart failure. But typically a heart failure patient in Ireland is seeing the cardiologist about 8 times a year. So it's quite intense. Now actually on the virtual care, they never have to see the cardiologist unless there's a program. And similarly, the nurse workload, the nurses can work 9 to 5 instead of working a 7 to 7 shift, but the results are amazing. 10-time reduction in hospitalizations. We had 150 patients in the cohort, and we had just 1 patient hospitalized in a year and a half. And that's because they were issued with a new script and they waited 3 days to change. An example of the virtual environment is respiratory care. So in Ireland, 20% of our emergency admissions are due to respiratory functions, and we now have a virtual board of about 1,000 patients with conditions like COPD, ILD, cystic fibrosis, and are all being kept out of hospital at a 1/20th of the cost of actually having a patient admitted. So again, we're seeing better outcomes, we're seeing lower costs, and the patients want to stay at home and the clinicians have less workload. So this whole new environment is, this hybrid work environment is coming. But I want to give you a quick example of the augmentation. Just to mention, Amy, I think you might have mentioned, became a big bang disruptor. And in Ireland, with patients couldn't go and see the hospital. So within 48 hours of being in Ireland, we had developed a remote monitoring solution for and because the barriers to adoption were dropped, we got that adopted very quickly. But now what we see with augmentation, that instead of a one-to-one relationship between a doctor and a patient, or a nurse and patient, one doctor or one nurse can monitor 100, 200, 300, 400 patients at a time. And just some international examples: Conversa Health, our Portland-based company that are one of the pioneers in virtual care. Murray Brzezinski is the CEO. They were recently acquired by Amwell, but 80% of the care that they now provide is AI and completely automated. And doctors and nurses only get involved when there's an issue. And that's a really good example of the augmentation that's being allowed by this new hybrid work environment. And similarly, Silver Cloud, Ken Cowell is the CEO of that company, and they recently passed go where 1 million patients are now using Silver Cloud. And just by coincidence, they were also acquired by Amwell. But the results that they're showing is the augmented hybrid offering is actually outperforming typical face-to-face mental health treatment by a factor of 10%. and it's probably 5x cheaper. So across healthcare, where there's a global crisis, this new hybrid work environment, the augmentation between humans and technology is really working. But what I would say, we're only at the end of the beginning. We have just started. There are so many opportunities looking forward.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Martin. I'm going to switch us quickly over to Sriram so that you can talk a bit about a very different environment, but also one that involves customer care. Can you weigh in from your perspective, give a little introduction, and then touch base with our audience on how automation and augmentation of work affects your clientele?
Sure, Amy. First of all, thanks for the opportunity. It's a wonderful discussion to have, and I'm very glad to be part of this conversation. My name is Sriram Sampath. I work for Tata Communications. I handle the UC collaboration space from a business perspective. I also handle the engineering piece. The last 22 years, I've been only working on the UC and the CC space. So I've had the good fortune of working both on the employee experience as well as the customer experience, and finding ways to improve both of them. Augmentation is a lovely word. As I was going through that slides that you presented, is a lovely word to describe the way that technology has to enable employees to do a better job in terms of taking care of the business needs, taking care of the customers, and so on and so forth. If I look at the technologies that we are adopting recently, some of them are new, obviously, but some of them have been there for a long time. Take NLP, for an example. I mean, speech recognition has been there for at least 15 plus years, but the adoption of that was very limited. There were lots of challenges because the technology was not open source, a lot of implementation related issues because everybody was trying to cram in everything that they could possibly do, trying to use the technology, and the adoption was very low. But I think the last 2-3 years, I would say a little bit more than that, things have changed a lot. There are lots of opportunities where businesses have modified the way that they are looking at these technologies to augment from a business perspective, right? Whether it is a chat application that originates when you're logging into a website, or you're trying to get some help through Uber or Amazon or whatever. I think the way that these technologies have been adopted really helps employees and the customers derive the best out of it. And what has been a kind of a blanket approach in the past, especially with the NLPs and the AIs, has been very now focused on ones, right? You want to specifically address a specific business problem, use technology to solve that. If it's a very complex requirement, take it away to the human who has a better capability of solving the problem. Because when a customer actually tries to engage with the business, when there is a problem, you would like to get that problem solved the first time as soon as possible. So the adoption has been fairly, better in the last 5 years. And I think when I marry this with the hybrid work culture experience, where now employees are now working from anywhere, security comes to my mind the first thing, right? There are lots of organizations where data is to be kept secure. Access to data is to be only given to a few authorized people. So when people are working from home, it's just not the communication channel that has to be secure, but also the technology has to allow the enterprises to be absolutely sure that their customers' data is protected. So if I'm an employee working from home and I'm looking at my business's data, how do I ensure that somebody else is not peering over my shoulder, looking at the data, somebody is not copying that information, I don't copy that information to another application? How do I make sure I don't take a picture of that? So a lot of secure work from home solutions are being discussed. And a lot of financial customers are looking at those solutions to make sure that while the flexibility is there in a hybrid work environment, the security is also given equal importance to make sure that the businesses protect themselves. So that's how I see it between employees, the humans, and the technology coming together to solve the business challenges and address the needs in the market.
Great, well, thank you. Kate, I know you have a lot to say on this subject, and I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself and also to give your perspective on remote workers.
Yes, thanks, Amy. So hello, everyone. I'm Kate Eberle Walker. I'm the CEO of Presence. So at Presence, we are providing teletherapy services to children in schools. So we have a network of over 2,000 clinicians, psychologists, speech therapists who work from home and connect with children who are in schools to deliver the therapy. And so yes, we are thinking all the time about technology and where we can use it, not only to make the human connection and deliver the service, but to augment, as we're talking about today. And for us, a lot of that is about figuring out every way, large and small, that we can take some work, some busy work, some paperwork, some administrative work off the load of the therapist so that they can focus their time and effort on their true expertise of the engagement and interaction with the children. So we've built a teletherapy platform and are always asking our clinicians for what don't you like to do? What takes too long? What are the pieces of your work that keep you from getting more in-person time with your patients? And we're taking that and figuring out how we can automate or at least give them a boost. And I think with AI developments getting stronger and stronger, I think there's just going to be increasing opportunity to be able to do that and have technology take more of the load off. The other thing that we see often is that for us, these remote interactions actually really enhance the therapy experience by bringing each participant's environment into the work. So for our therapists, they're incorporating their own space, their things, their pets, whatever is around them into the sessions to really be able to engage the child. They're able to see that, the place where the child's at. And, just as it does for us at work when we're interacting and seeing into someone's home office, and vice versa, you can get a lot more out of that and use it to drive the engagement versus if you're sitting together in a conference room or a room that doesn't belong to anyone. So we find that just that experience of interacting from two different places can really drive a stronger outcome.
I think that's a perfect example of how you see augmentation affecting culture, affecting place, and starting the cycle over again. I want to make sure that we have a chance for Prakash to weigh in. Prakash, is there anything you wanted to add to this, and can you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone. Prakash Man, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cloudbrink. Cloudbrink is a SaaS service that is delivering in-office experience to the modern, remote, and hybrid workforce anywhere, everywhere. Amy, this topic is very pertinent to us. Whether we like it or not, we have taken a fresh look at the way we work. I would say 80%, if not 100% of the panelists here are dialing in from wherever, right? We've broken the rules. We've unshackled ourselves from the classic desk and opened up brand new creative ways of boosting productivity, enjoying work, family, and life. And technology makes it all possible. Amy, I could not agree more with some of the data you presented. When we speak to the CIOs, the number one challenge that they are facing is traditional designs of these digital technologies for organizations have been focused on, for decades and decades now, have been focused on providing best performance for people when they are inside the office. They have spent billions of dollars committing to these business-grade facilities. But today, as all of these mobile digital workers, all of us come together, we're starting to see the rise of this new offices anywhere. And everyone is demanding the same lightning fast in-office-like experience with invisible levels of security on wherever you go. So this topic is very pertinent. Looking forward to the panel discussion here. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, why don't we dive into the next topic, moving around the model, and we can talk a little bit about culture, because I think that this is one of the least discussed but most important parts of the future of work. And the reason I say that is it's very easy to invest in technologies and to say, well, if we get this collaboration and communication technology, we'll have a better connection between our employees. Well, what we found is, while this is one of the most invested areas, along with security, of course, it's also one of the areas that has the most ongoing challenges. So people make the investment in augmentation for human engagement, but the humans aren't cooperating. Fancy that, you know? So I want to just shift and talk about how this affects each of you. And we can do this spontaneously, have an ongoing conversation. But Kate, I know this is near and dear to your heart, so I'm going to turn it over to you first. You know, when you think about what culture is changing, and you talked about going around the horn and having places and people connected with one another and the automation of work, talk specifically about culture. You started to, but I'd really like to, while it's fresh in our minds, dive in on that subject.
So yes, I think, you know, and you mentioned collaboration, and we found in a fully remote work environment, which in addition to our therapists, all of our employees work fully from home as well. And we found we had to redefine how we worked together, how we collaborated. The first, I'd say, organizational reaction to remote work was to constantly get together on video conference. And it led to a very meeting heavy culture. And then, you know, I find us, we would launch meeting reduction initiatives. I mean, to try to get some time back. And, you know, we were losing productivity and working time and had to really examine, why is this happening? It's happening because there's no other way to get work done together other than to come online in a meeting. That had been the structure, that had been the technology that we were using and sharing. And there was no other way to just grab somebody quickly to have, you know, what could be a 2-minute discussion perhaps instead of a 20-minute meeting. So we had to do a few things really deliberately to address it, because we were finding actual working time, you know, what some call heads down time, was getting pushed to after hours. Burnout was rising. So we shifted some of our technology use, you know, interaction through Google Docs. We added ClickUp, Miro, you know, project management tools. We had to learn other ways for teams to work together in an interactive way to sort of, you know, simulate that standing around a table or a whiteboard working together on something. And that took away from the need to necessarily be doing that in live meetings all of the time. We also introduced what we call no internal meeting days, where we said nobody's scheduled. These are open collaboration hours. We're all working, but we're not scheduled. And that led to some of that comfort coming back in being able to just tap someone and say, hey, can you talk for 5 minutes? Can you talk for 15 minutes? We were able to reach each other more. So I think that's been a key for us. The other thing I'd say, we are talking about hybrid work cultures today, and the future of it is, we did absolutely find that to really get collaboration humming and to build trust in relationships in the org, we had to bring back in person, which we do by bringing people together for what we call team on-sites. And this is our way of giving room for forming friendships. We all know, I mean, having friendships at work and relationships and trust, this is critical. And a few days spent together every quarter as a team, we see that pay off in the team's ability to work together in the months that follow.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we see this culture happening both on what I call rituals of work and new rituals of work with synchronous and asynchronous communication. And then we start to have many more micro interactions rather than the time frame or the measure as being in hours or half hours, but it can be in minutes. And I think that kind of distribution is an interesting evolution of how we're building our culture, micro moment by micro moment. I think, Sriram, would you talk a little bit about how this has an impact on the culture that you're seeing? Because I think a lot of what we assume is that people are in sort of robotic roles. And, you know, frankly, one of the benefits of this is that we become culturally sensitive to interaction and monitoring how people are interacting. And the employee experience is important and it builds culture internally, but it also allows that culture to be telegraphed to customers and build a better employee relationship and customer relationship. So can you talk about culture from your perspective?
Sure. And I would just spend a couple of minutes on what Kate mentioned, right? So when we started adopting unified communications, not just us, when I say us, I refer to a lot of customers and us as well, right? Everything turned into an online meeting. I agree with her completely. And then it was a lot of time wasted, because what could have been a 2-minute conversation was ending up with a 30-minute discussion with some 20 people on every call, and literally your calendars were getting packed, because the minute somebody sees your calendar free, they'll just block some time to meet, right? So it took us a lot of effort to understand what needs to be done and how other channels of communication should be used, and not everything needs to be on a video call or on a conference to get things done. So I agree with you, Kate, completely. On the other aspect, Amy, that you mentioned about is when employees are adopting a hybrid work, when they're moving, when communication is moving to the cloud, when collaboration is moving alongside that, and then people are working from everywhere, right? People are not just working from home, as you can understand. A lot of things happen, right? One is making sure that when an organization is onboarding employees or training employees, how do they make sure that all the processes and the tools that they need to do their job is properly given to them, trained, and made sure that they adopt it well. A lot of challenges we have seen is customers buy, and we do that ourselves as well. We buy a lot of technology, we don't use them. Yeah. The adoption of those technologies, you pay for X dollars for 20 features, you hardly use 2 or 3 of them. Yeah. So it's very important for employees to be made aware that there are so many other ways in which their productivity could improve. That is one. The second part is employees should also feel valuable and valued, right? What I mean by that is when you empower employees with tools, processes, platform, and train them how to use it, and empower them with all the needs to handle their jobs, that will show on their efficiency. That will show on the way that they emotionally get attached to the nature of work that they do. And that will reflect on the service that one does for the customers, right? And the business will definitely benefit from that. So it's just not giving access to data, it's just not giving secure access to data, but also making sure that employees are able to understand, appreciate, and use them in the right sense. And we have seen that when employees solve a customer problem, when you solve an internal problem, with or without technology, it doesn't matter. It's only that technology helps you do it better. They find the work more enjoyable, right? They feel that they've contributed to the success of the function, or the success of the organization, and feel good about it. And that's very important in today's world, where people don't connect in person as often as they used to. While people do come to offices for some strategic meetings, or kind of there's a 3-day, 4-day week where you have to be in office, it's still not the way it used to be before, and all for the right reasons. So it's important that I'm going back to that augmentation principle that I started with. But yes, the entire circle is interconnected. You break it, the circle breaks.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a really good point. And then Martin, I know you're in a very different kind of cultural environment, and most people think of healthcare as very much being in-person based. Can you talk about some of the ways in which culture has evolved for your organization and the work projects that you're working in?
Yes, Amy, and in fact, I wish it had evolved, but it actually, hasn't. Peter Drucker once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And in the Irish health system with the HSE, I've been driving a digital strategy, and we had a lot of adoption and demand from patients and clinicians and nurses. But the culture of the organization and healthcare, Eric Topol, who's a renowned cardiologist, he would say, medicine is probably the industry that is most resistant to change. So I think this healthcare is really on the front line of the battle between the possibilities of technology and how it can transform the work environment and service, And actually this resistance to change and, you know, what some people call old power versus new power, where healthcare is moving towards is the networked organization and a lot of virtual care. But, you know, what I've observed, certainly in the Irish Health Service, is, you know, at higher level non-clinical administrators that are very removed from actually what's happening in the coalface, you know, quite resistance to change. I would have to call out the NHS because they, you know, and I think in the very early days of we worked with the NHS and we shared what we were doing with remote monitoring, and the NHS took that and ran with it, and recently they had their, you know, 100,000 patient that is being monitored from a virtual ward. And it seems like the NHS culture, you know, they actually much more quickly adopted because of senior management, you know, buy-in. The chief digital officer in the NHS really got behind, you know, this. So, you know, culture is hugely important. And, you know, coming back to something I think Sriram or Prakash mentioned, and Kate mentioned this as well, Karl Spivey says, trust is the bandwidth of communication.
Oh, I love that expression. That's great.
It's a great quote too. You can't go fully virtual. And what Kate was doing, you know, once a quarter, you know, bringing the employees, you know, to the office and combining. But I think, you know, technology is creating a new time-space continuum and fundamentally disrupting the way that work was done. And back to augmentation, because, and I think Prakash might have mentioned, because of the flexibility that is offered, you know, this can really be a win-win. We can do better work, we can be more productive, you know, we can be flexible. But just to, you know, finish on a quick point, it's no longer about the culture of the organization we work in, but we're now more and more, you know, it's about the, you know, the unit of competition is the ecosystem. So, you know, the culture of hybrid work and virtual has to extend across the ecosystem, not just one organization. I think that is very important, you know, moving forward.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Martin. Prakash, did you have anything you wanted to add here? Because I'm going to turn to you to talk about space first. And
let's try to talk about spaces, Amy.
Okay, excellent. We've been hinting around the edges of this for a while in the area of the topic, because you really can't distinguish between the automation and the use of automation in creating a culture, and in turn, where does that culture get manifest? Where does it evolve? It evolves in digital workspaces and physical workplaces. And I think what's interesting about the world we're in now is that these two are becoming increasingly connected. And that's because we have the technology to do it. If you remember the slide that I shared earlier, that physical workplaces are now getting a great deal of investment side by side with cloud compute initiatives. And it's because we're able to shift to cloud and all of the offerings that permits us to engage with, that you can have new ways of working, develop new cultures at scale. But I'd like you, Prakash, to talk really specifically about how the technology behind these hybrid work environments, digital and physical, is evolving, and what some of the benefits and some of the challenges you've seen.
Thank you, Amy. We've talked about this. I briefly mentioned it. Professor Martin has mentioned it as well. Whether we like it or not, we're living through this once in a generational shift where, when, how we work is fundamentally changing from the last 2 or 3 decades. We've seen several statistics, global statistics I read earlier today shows that only 9% of people want to go back to office in full time. And this has massive impact across the board on both physical as well as digital infrastructure. One thing that is consistent across the board is that everybody agrees that the moment right now and our future is all about getting the best out of our most important asset, which is our people. And we need technology to help us perform at our best, regardless of wherever we are. We were talking about culture. Let me share an example from earlier this week. I was talking to a Fortune 100 CIO, and his number one challenge today is when engineers are inside the office building, they're able to do 7 software code updates or 7 workflows. But when they work from home, when they go anyway, and we're using the term home very loosely. Home could mean people traveling to their places to meet their siblings, parents, their families. People may be traveling for skiing and biking in summers or camping somewhere or at Airbnb or wherever people want to be, right? So when they're working from these places outside the office, they're working twice as hard, and they're only able to do 2 workflows versus 7 workflows when they were inside the office. So Amy, as you mentioned, this is not just a technology or IT or a CIO problem. We're hearing over and over that this has now become a CHRO, Chief Human Resources issue. This has become a board level conversation. Absolutely. And it reflects back to how do we make sure our employees feel connected? Sriram talked about it. Kate mentioned different programs everyone uses. For example, here at Cloudbrink, we are hybrid first, but every Friday we bring everyone together in different local sites for small wine and cheese events. So people can come together and talk about families and talk about other topics, right? Different ways to continue to connect employees. So employee connectivity is important. In this new sort of digital world, how do we make sure employees feel motivated? They feel productive. They feel like my productivity has not gone down when I'm outside the office.
Yeah, quite the opposite in some cases, actually. Yeah.
100%. And you're 100%, and this is where I'm going. Is then it ties back into employee happiness, employee retention, and all of those things. And by the way, the same example that I mentioned about this Fortune 100 company is true with several healthcare programs, where we find that leveraging traditional infrastructure has resulted in more number of complaints when people shift to e-health and patients move from in-office visits to at-home visits. The good news here is that in this new digital hybrid age, we have platforms that can amplify human productivity while balancing these digital infrastructure trades. And the industry is getting to know this for the course of last 2 years now. And today there are several platforms that are available in the market. Cloudbrink specifically, and there are more platforms like Cloudbrink in the market, but Cloudbrink specifically is built on this vision to deliver in-office experience to this modern hybrid workforce anywhere. And our mission is to empower this new generation of workforce to be able to work and live better wherever they go and wherever they want to work from. Back to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important anywhere, any device, anytime, but in service of building a culture that is productive, in service of meeting business strategy goals. And I think there's an assumption that the word hybrid equals remote, and it doesn't. It could mean, 80% of the time in office. It's just having the capacity for doing that kind of elastic shifting. So let's go then maybe to Sriram. If you could share just a few use cases, and I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. So just a couple would be fantastic.
Sure. I mean, I'll keep it short. So when we are looking at workplaces and spaces, there's a shift in the way that businesses are looking at their infrastructure. I mean, one is on the cloud-based infrastructure, where the adoption of cloud is increasing more than ever. On the security-based tools and processes, but also on the in-office infrastructure as well. Because now that hybrid is here to stay, or at least that's how it looks like it from my perspective, for sure. The way that offices are designed is completely different now, in the sense when people come to work, it's not that all 100% come to work. It's still about 60-70% maximum. So the remaining 30 needs to be accommodated, and they shouldn't feel excluded when a meeting is going on. So it's important that the experience that one should have should be as seamless as how it would be if that person was at work, right? I mean, at work in the sense in the office. So whether it be meeting rooms getting redesigned, having large displays, having the right equipment for audio and video technologies. So that's one. The second challenge that customers are facing is they have invested a lot on infrastructure of these kind before. There are switches, there is network devices, there are these existing phones. What do I do with them? Do I just dump them, or can I leverage that existing investment? And that's where we work with customers to see how they can leverage existing infrastructure they have, existing assets they have, when at the same time they move to the cloud from a collaboration perspective. So what we do at least is make sure that we assess before we advise, make sure that we take stock of what's happening there, how they currently support business, and when they move to cloud, what are the challenges they are likely to face, which part of those should move to cloud first. So be on the consulting kind of a role to make sure that the business transformation happens smoothly. So it's a combination of all these things. I think there's no single straight answer or a silver bullet to bite, but I think a lot of these things happen over a longer period of time. And transformation is, it's a transformation project, so it takes time. Adoption is going to be a little challenging when customers move to cloud, but that's where the future is, and that's where productivity is going to be largely improved when done properly.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's really a period of iterative trial and error to find what works for individual organizations, not a one size fits all. And often the core of the challenge is a cultural one, not necessarily a technical one. And the technical chaos can be reflective of the organizational challenges. So these things are all coming together. Kate, do you want to give us some examples from your perspective, designing not just for diverse locations, but, one of the things we've learned in this whole evolution of hybrid work is that there's a much greater diversity of people who can be engaged in the workforce, be that a broad geographic swath of people who no longer were excluded because we have the means to bring them in digitally, be that people that have different abilities that were perhaps more challenged to get into the office physically, but they have great things to contribute in terms of their ingenuity. Just take us there a little bit, because that's one of the interesting side effects we've seen, that we've had very positive sustainability side effects, very positive diversity and inclusion side effects, not because that was the original intent, but I think it's yet one more benefit and reason why hybrid work environments continue to be so enduring.
Absolutely. It's really giving us an entirely new lens on accessibility of the workspace. For us at Presence, we have a majority female workforce, and the predominance of our employees and our therapists are primary caregivers, working moms. So we find, research finds that women, even more so than men, have a preference for flexible work schedules, remote work. It's a big part of how we've built our network and built our company, is by hearing that and offering remote paths and flexible schedules wherever we can. And that, translating that into what we want out of our spaces, our physical workspaces, has been really interesting for me over the past year. I mentioned we saw this need to bring our employees together for collaboration moments and for trust and friendship building. When we opened our first space in New York to host these, it sent a shock of panic and fear through the workforce. Are you going to do this everywhere? Are we going to have to come in? How many days? What's the schedule? To the point where I ultimately banned the word office in the language we used. I said that this is a collaboration space, and it is only for that. But unpacking that a bit more, it really showed me that there are different things people want out of their office space. They do want an opportunity to get together and have collaboration. Some people really want an option of a place to go work where they might be more productive than they can be in their home environment, but no one wants to be told exactly, when and where they have to be there. So, I think for us, it's been about trying to find the right balance that gives our employees what they want, but also is, sustainable for a business. We can't afford to open optional spaces in every city where we have workers at this point. So it's going to be a real challenge, I think, for businesses to figure out their position and all that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And we have to remember too that the physical location has implications socially for the physical environment, the towns that are relying on the revenue from people coming in to be present or not coming in. Martin, we haven't heard from you on this topic, just very quickly, so we have time for Q&A. Any thoughts from your perspective on how the workspace and the workplace are evolving, and maybe talk just a bit about the future, how you see this, not only today, but a tomorrow scenario?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Well, one of the things and I think building on what Prakash said, I think there's the opportunity to completely reimagine actually, the whole work environment. So if I give an example, something that just doesn't make sense, we bring really sick people into hospitals, which are really nasty places. And for example, hospital-acquired infections are a real problem. So just to give one practical example, we have been working with Dr. Mike O'Malley in Galway University Hospital, and our cystic fibrosis patients who are very susceptible and vulnerable to hospital-acquired infections, they are now fully virtually managed. They occasionally need to come in for a checkup, but they're much safer. They also actually are saving, on average, each patient is saving about $1,000 a year in actually physical transport costs and a lot of obviously time costs, 3 or 4 days of travel time. So this is an example where the workspace, and actually in this case, the point of delivery has been shifted from the hospital to the home. We call this stay left, shift left. 10X is the overarching strategy. But again, I mentioned the quadruple helix. The patient gets treated at home. They're much safer. The doctors and nurses are much less, workload. Everything's done virtual. There's actually a greenhouse gas saving. And this is an example of, a shift. And, again, what Prakash said, the ability to completely reimagine the workplace, and it works for everybody. It's a win-win-win solution. So moving forward, I think some industries will be totally reimagined, and I think healthcare will be. Just to say, I think there's 3 Copernican shifts that will and need to happen in healthcare. The first one is from illness to wellness. In Europe, we spend 97% of our healthcare spend on illness. The second thing is moving from doctor knows best to patients know best, and by empowering patients with digital technology and IoT, looking forward, we're probably going to be generating about 100 times more data than we are currently using IoT devices. And the last shift is from hospital to home, and this is all being enabled. So today we can now have better vital signs in your home than you can in a hospital. So in the future, we can completely reimagine the workspace. I think we have a positive, perfect storm going on. So coming back to your future work model, we can augment, we can create a better workplace and workspace, and also, the culture. As Prakash mentioned, 9% of people just want to return to the office full time. We can create a much better experience that is flexible. One of the biggest issues in healthcare is doctor and nurse workload and burnout. By using, IT, and I gave the example of Conversa Health, 80% of their care now is done by AI and virtual automated care. We can create a whole new kind of workplace with better service and better results.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, I'd like to wrap us up with just one short minute for you each. We'll start with Prakash. What is your vision for what the future of work looks like in the next 18 months? Prakash, we'll start with you.
Amy, we've talked about it. Sriram mentioned, Professor Martin has mentioned, this requires complete reimagination. when we go hybrid first, we must understand our diversity is going to increase exponentially. Diverse set of people, diverse set of locations, networks, and devices all coming together. And in that world, bringing digital equality across all of these sets becomes super critical. And to do that, there are three things that are very important. The first one is our focus ought to be less about technology, more about how do we significantly improve people's productivity no matter where they are. The second one is how do we take any network, whether it's your home network, office network, coffee shop network, airport network, cellular connection into how do we convert and transform that into a secure, reliable, high performance network so you can work from anywhere you want. And finally, we didn't talk much about security, but cyber plays a critical role in this whole story. So bringing a platform that offers the highest level of security for users when they connect to diverse set of applications, cross geographic locations, cross different networks, and all of that coming together. So that's what the future holds. That's those. But again, the good news is there are platforms now available, such as Cloudbrink and others, that allows us to bring all of that together and replicate that experience, in-office experience, no matter where we go.
Excellent. I'm going to shift now to Kate. We're going to go in order of our pictures here. Kate, how about for you?
So we've talked about hybrid work is, I believe, really the way to improve every single employee's satisfaction with the way that they work, their feelings about the place that they work, and ultimately drive retention and long-term happiness. So, I think it's increasingly what great organizations will need to do to attract and retain a productive team and a diverse team. So I think this next phase is about really paying attention to what employees are really wanting, what they're looking for when we talk about hybrid work, and building the structures that make sense from a business perspective as well, so that we move away from this phase of maybe pushing from each side to try to get to alignment, and we find the solutions that really work for both sides.
Yeah, I think it's a lot less us and them, but we. How do we get to we? Sriram, your turn.
So I think most of the organizations are in the journey of moving to the cloud. They may be in different parts, in different phases of the journey, but they certainly are in that journey. And as communications move to the cloud and we enable customers to do that, it's just not communications alone. I think the other ecosystem, the applications that we're running in-house are also moving to the cloud. So it's the next 18 months, I think we will see a lot of integrations happening between the cloud service providers, the applications that are running in different clouds, and the on-prem solution. So I don't think some of the applications that customers have in their premises is going to go away soon. That's still going to take a long time, or perhaps will stay. So the essence is, how do I marry these two, make sure that the businesses make use of both worlds, and ensure that it's just not a hybrid workplace for employees, but as businesses roll out their operations, some of them will stay in-house, some of them will move to the cloud. How do I integrate them well? So it's going to be a triangulation of cloud on-prem integration, and on the other hand, with other applications running on other hyperscaler clouds as well. So that's where we see things evolving in the next 18 months.
Excellent. And finally, Martin, from your perspective, where do you see things going, and what people need to do in the next 18 months?
Well, I think actually, Sriram, the TCS, and Krishnan, the global CTO of TCS, has pioneered the idea of frugal innovation. And what we're seeing in healthcare is, when we deploy technology, and the way cloud has democratized computing and the combination of other technologies like IoT and AI, we're seeing for relatively small investments, we can get exponential or 10x returns. And then we've seen a pattern in Ireland, so where we apply digital technology to healthcare, which is very information intensive, and we use a living lab methodology. We're getting returns that are 10x better, 10x cheaper, 10x faster. So, Prakash again mentioned this diversified world, and we're seeing this Cambrian explosion, and we genuinely can create, certainly in healthcare, a much better world where, patients have more responsibility, have a lot more information, and we're creating work environments for doctors and nurses and physicians and pharmacists that are sustainable. But just to finish, I think it comes down to culture. I see a problem in the global healthcare industry is that healthcare workers are only valued for their instrumental worth rather than their intrinsic worth.
Very good.
And the reason we have so many people leaving is that doctors and nurses, and they feel taken for granted. They don't feel valued. And we also need a culture change in the healthcare industry that potentially could be catalyzed by the technology. So I think it's a very exciting, the next 18 months, there's a lot going to happen, globally, but specifically in healthcare. Healthcare has a lot of catching up to do in digitization, and it's going to be very exciting.
Excellent. I am once again going to thank my panel for being so fantastic.